In the past, some believed that the human fetus was like a parasite, that it always got enough nourishment from its mother, even at the expense of the mother's own tissues. By this reasoning, the quantity and quality of the food the mother ate during pregnancy didn't make any difference, for it was believed a pregnant mother's diet didn't affect the future mental and physical growth of her child. A Johns Hopkins University scientist didn't agree. He's Dr. Bacon Joe, an expert in nutrition at the Johns Hopkins School of Hygiene and Public Health. Dr. Joe believed it was possible that a mother's diet during pregnancy might affect the later development of her children. Work which he began in 1952 with laboratory animals led him to this belief. This was followed later with studies in humans. First, the animal work. Rats were used to determine if a poor diet during pregnancy does affect the offspring. In all of the experiments, two groups of female rats were bred. The rat on the right is typical of one group, the pregnant control group, which was given all the food they could eat. The female on the left is typical of the other group, the restricted group, which was given only 1/2 the amount of food the controls normally ate. The offspring from both groups of mothers were weaned 28 days after birth. They were then given all the food they wanted. One of the most obvious differences in the two groups of offspring was growth. These two rats are the same age, 22 months old, but the larger rat's mother had an unlimited food supply. By weighing the animals at several ages, the scientists found that restricting the mother's diet during gestation and lactation resulted in severe and permanent growth stunting in the offspring. At birth, the babies born of normal mothers had a mean body weight of 6.5 grams. The offspring of restricted mothers had a mean weight of 4.8 grams. At 3 weeks, rats born of normal mothers weighed on the average about 30 grams more than those born of restricted mothers. At 3 months, the difference was nearly 80 grams. At 6 months, about 70 grams. At 12 months, about 80 grams. And after 2 years, the average weight of rats born of normal mothers was about 100 grams more than the weight of those born of restricted mothers. It was concluded that offspring of restricted mothers never would grow to the size of the control group, even though they had an unlimited supply of high-quality food. The investigators also wanted to find out if there was any difference in how efficiently the animals used their food, specifically the food nitrogen the animals required to form protein. The rats were housed in specially designed cages so their urine and feces could be collected and the amount of food consumed tabulated. The urine and feces were later analyzed to determine how much nitrogen the animals retained in relationship to the amount of food nitrogen they consumed. As a result of testing the animals at several ages, it was found that the offspring of restricted mothers retained less nitrogen, even though they ate more food than the offspring of normal mothers. In fact, rats from restricted mothers had to eat up to nearly twice as much food to reach a certain size. It had become clear that offspring of restricted mothers don't grow as well and don't use food as efficiently as normal offspring. But what about learning? Numerous experiments by Dr. Joe and his associates have shown that the ability of the baby rats to learn, as well as their ability to adapt to stress, are impaired when their mothers' diets are restricted during pregnancy. They knew that the brain has some protection from poor maternal nutrition, a phenomenon called brain sparing. But they felt that perhaps too much confidence had been placed in brain sparing. And again, they were right. At 6 months, the animals were placed in a darkened corner of a box. Then a door was opened, exposing them to light. and a buzzer was sounded. This offspring of a normal mother quickly adapts to the light, leaves the darkened corner, and begins exploring his new environment. The investigators observe the behavior of the animals and note the number of squares traversed. This offspring of a normal mother shows no signs of stress, apparently undisturbed by the strangeness of the box. The offspring of a restricted mother shows opposite reactions when the darkened corner is flooded with light and the buzzer is sounded. He doesn't leave the corner and explore like the normal offspring. Furthermore, he defecates and urinates, classical signs of emotional instability in laboratory animals. After numerous trials with restricted and normal rats, it became clear that offspring of restricted mothers were more emotional, less active, and succumbed more easily to stress. In another test, the rats were observed in this development box on the 5th and 6th day after birth, and then twice each week until they were 7 weeks old. This 21-day-old offspring of a normal mother quickly began moving from square to square, grooming, standing alone, and even escaping the box, well ahead of its counterpart, born of a restricted mother. The restricted rats consistently lagged behind the control group. For example, the restricted rats took an average of 5 days longer to begin grooming, 10 days longer to begin standing with support, and 16 days longer than controls to begin escaping from the box. Also, they displayed less curiosity in their environment, as evidenced by the fewer number of squares traversed. When the animals were 2½ months old, they were tested on a maze. The rats were first denied water for 24 hours. The goal at the end of the maze was water. The rats from restricted mothers during early trials took an average of 11 minutes to negotiate the maze, compared to the normal's 3 minutes. And the restricted rats never learned to run the maze without making an average of 3 errors each try. The restricted offspring also had difficulty balancing on the elevated maze, suffered tremors, seizures, and assumed bizarre positions. The normal rats during early trials ran the maze in an average of 3 minutes, and after 45 trials, rats of normal mothers consistently ran the maze without making any errors. Each rat was given 121 trials during 22 sessions to run the maze. Another test utilized a specially designed rat hotel. It revealed differences in social behavior of the 2 groups of offspring. The ones in the upper corners are from diet-restricted mothers. The ones in the lower corners were born of normal mothers. The normal rats in the lower corners quickly leave their spaces and begin exploring. They usually dominate when contacting the restricted rats. The restricted rats show fear and maintain their fear longer than the normal rats. The scientists concluded from these and other experiments that the ability of the rat to learn and to adjust to stress was reduced when their mothers had an inferior diet during pregnancy and lactation. While this work was going on, they were also trying to find the most essential ingredient in the diet. It proved to be protein. In fact, protein is so important that by reducing it alone, they produced growth stunting nearly as severe as that produced by restricting the mother's overall diet. Their research also indicated that offspring from restricted mothers have reduced capabilities to produce antibodies. The result is a lowered resistance to infectious disease and a lower average survival rate. The human implications of the animal work are tremendous. Their animal studies established, beyond a doubt, that poor maternal diet during pregnancy and lactation leads to stunting in the offspring's growth. reduces its ability to use food efficiently, slows antibody production, and, most startling, impairs learning ability. And they proved it is insufficient protein in the mother's diet that does the damage. But what scientists find in laboratory animals can only suggest the same things might be true in humans. So Dr. Joe and a group of associates designed a study with human subjects to test the effect of maternal diet during pregnancy and lactation on the growth and development of their children. After several years of preliminary studies and planning, the main study began in January 1967 in Taiwan. Sui-lin Township was selected because the population is stable and because the normal diet in that region contains marginal levels of protein. Sweet potatoes make up 80% or more of the food intake, with the balance primarily rice. They can afford only small amounts of the high-protein foods, such as fish, meat, and eggs. The streets are filled with livestock, but it is raised to be sold and only occasionally reaches a local family's table. As a result, their daily food consumption includes only 30 to 40 grams of protein, and that comes mostly from vegetables and consequently is of poor quality. So in this human study, it is not a matter of restricting a mother's diet, as was done in the animal studies. Instead, one group of mothers, the control group, continues eating their normal low-protein diet. The second group of pregnant mothers have their normally low-protein diet supplemented with protein. Then, as in the animal studies, the children of the one group of mothers getting the extra protein are compared with children of the other group of mothers eating the low-protein diet. Meade Johnson and Company developed 2 liquid food supplements which look, taste, and smell very similar, and which are packaged in identical cans. Each 12-ounce can of Supplement A for the experimental group of mothers contains 20 grams of high-quality protein and 400 calories. Supplement B for the control group contains no protein and only 40 calories. Before the liquids arrive in Sui-lin, each can has been coated with a number that matches one of the participating mothers. During the first 5 years of the study, approximately 600,000 cans of supplement have been distributed to the 14 villages where the mothers live. Each village has some mothers drinking Supplement A and others drinking Supplement B. It would have been far easier to assign Supplement A to one village and Supplement B to another, but then any difference in the results could theoretically be due to the unique qualities in the villages and not to the effects of the supplements. The study is a double-blind study. Neither the mothers nor the immediate research staff know who is getting the protein supplement. The 230 women participating in the study gather twice a day at central points in the villages, where they are given the liquid by nurses. The nurses encourage the women to drink all of the liquid, but if it is not fully consumed, they measure how much is left. So far, an average of 90% of the participants are drinking 95% of their supplement. If mothers are working in homes and fields and cannot come to the central distributing points in the villages, the liquid is delivered by nurses who watch the mothers consume the supplement. The mother drinks the supplement twice daily while nursing the first study baby. She continues drinking the supplement daily through pregnancy, birth, and nursing of a second study child. This produces 2 study groups of children to be compared with 2 control groups. The first study group of children and a corresponding control group have mothers who consume supplement only while nursing. The second study group and controls are children of mothers receiving the supplement during both pregnancy and lactation. There are now 230 first study children and 150 second study children. At the ages of 15 months and 21 months, male children are taken to the research project's metabolic ward to test how efficiently they use their food. Each child sleeps in one of the 20 individual crib rooms. 14 nurses care for the youngsters in the spotlessly clean facility. Each child is given much needed individual attention by the nursing staff, and parents may visit at any time. However, the mothers have acquired so much confidence in the efficient Chinese nurses, they come to see their children only occasionally. During the child's stay, his metabolic efficiency is determined by measuring the difference between the amount of nitrogen consumed and the amount excreted. A diet formula containing soybean protein, oil, and sugar is prepared for each child, with amounts adjusted to his body weight. The children receive this formula for a preliminary 5-day adjustment period, followed by 12 more days while the actual study is underway. During the 12 days, all feces and urine are collected. In many human metabolic studies, children are confined to cribs for this purpose. Not wanting to restrain the children, and particularly to fit into Asian cultural patterns and avoid parental resistance, a special diaper was developed that allows separate collection of the urine and feces while still allowing the child freedom to move around. 2 separate samples of all fecal and urine specimens from each child are then sent to the Naval Medical Research Laboratory in Taipei, where they are analyzed and compared. It can then be determined how well the children are able to use their food. After the metabolic tests are completed, the children are gradually returned to their diets during a 5-day readjustment period. The investigators also want to learn if a low-protein maternal diet affects a child's learning ability and motor development, as suggested by the rat studies. At 8 months, each child is given a behavioral test called the Bailey test. The test includes 90 separate procedures, each rated according to its difficulty. Both groups of first study and second study children are tested and then compared to a standard frame of mental versus real age. The standard was established by studies made at 7 test centers in the United States. Numerous growth measurements are also made while the children stay at the metabolic ward, and a staff pediatrician gives medical care to the children and records their illnesses. This care by the pediatrician is constant and not limited to the period of observation in the ward. Tests designed to determine whether antibody production is affected by maternal diet are also performed. The research involving the children is not confined to the laboratory. The research staff makes frequent visits to the homes, maintaining up-to-date records on the growth of the youngsters. Specially trained maternity nurses record growth data between birth and 40 months of age. The children are weighed and measured not only for height, but at numerous points of the body. They also measure by skin fold thickness the amount of fatty tissue at several locations. Blood samples taken from the children are evaluated to determine hemoglobin and plasma protein levels. The information is useful in determining the child's nutritional status. Staff members also carefully analyze the mother's diets by periodically evaluating the food consumed in an average day. This information will be used when interpreting the final data. Knowing the inherent difficulties of doing this kind of research, numerous safeguards have been built in. We've already mentioned it is a double-blind study. Neither the mothers nor the field staff know which cans of supplement contain the extra protein. Also in this research, firstborn sons are not included, for they traditionally receive special treatment in Oriental homes, including additional food, which might slant the results. The study is, by necessity, long-term. The work with humans, which began in 1967, will continue until mid-1973, and arrangements are now being made to follow the children even longer. At Johns Hopkins, it was proven in animals that poor maternal diet stunts growth, impairs learning, slows antibody production, and reduces the ability to use food. But it's still unknown whether the same thing is true in humans, and it won't be known until 1973. That's when the data obtained from the children at Sui-lin will be matched with their mothers, who either did or did not have the protein supplement during pregnancy. If it is found that maternal diet does affect the growth and development of children, then a low-cost protein supplement can be distributed to undernourished mothers everywhere. The result would be an upgrading of the quality of the human race.